Angelica, welcome back.
So glad to be back.
Everyone's happy when you're back. Every time you come back, people start rushing back into the Patreon. They're like, people will hit me up like, hey, you mind if you just slip me episode 2 of Angelica? I don't want to subscribe to your Patreon, but I do want to hear part 2. Could you do me a favor?
Well,
and and what do I always do when people ask me that? I say, sure.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
But guess what? If you want more Angelica in your life, there's now a way to go direct to the source because I've started my own YouTube channel.
There you go. How can they find it?
Well, they can go on YouTube and search Taipology, Taipolgy, and whatever. Taipology and Angelica.
Taipology.
All right, thanks.
Taipology. Yeah.
And they will find it. And I would be very, very grateful if you can give it a like, give it a follow, leave a comment. I'm a small channel right now, so any kind of support really means a lot to me.
Yeah, and you have a Substack too, and we will drop links to both your YouTube and the Substack in the comments.
It is highly appreciated.
Yeah. All right. So lots going on in the United States. And, we talk a lot. I think you on your Taipology, you often talk about how often do you talk about Taiwan vis-a-vis China, which I think is a big story these days, versus the relationship with the U.S.?
Mostly it is Taiwan and China because I feel like that's a missing perspective. But I have had a few episodes where I talk about the relationship with the U.S. In fact, it's kind of hard to talk about one without talking about another. It always ends up being this Mei-Zhong-Tai triangle, right? It's hard to talk about one set of relationships without tangentially bringing in the other one.
Yeah, and I feel like there is this view of Taiwan being caught in sometimes hot, sometimes cold tug of war, where each not only wants to, the U.S. doesn't want to annex Taiwan, but we want to control it. But I feel like there's a soft aspect to it, meaning like here in America, like we assume without knowing, because we don't really know anything about Taiwan, we just assume that the people of Taiwan love America.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And hate China because China is sort of the evil father that wants to, take the daughter back and put her back under house arrest or whatever.
So Americans want to play the knight, the shining knight, the prince on a white horse role to come and rescue Taiwan, the damsel in distress. So it's very, very confusing for them when we have local parties like the Kuomintang and even the upstart TPP party who are asserting a bit of independence and in terms of wanting to true independence, not Taiwanese independence, but true agency, I would say, in saying this is our future at stake. And if we are that close to China and we do have such a big issue, then we should be talking to them. When they assert that kind of agency, all of a sudden it's not cute anymore. And so the usual spiel, you hear this a lot from Western-facing journalists, especially the ones with the white knight complex, and they come to Taiwan and they want to spread democracy. They'll say things like, well, the KMT is not really a Taiwanese party. They are a Chinese party. And I'm just like, listen to yourself. Do you not see the implications when you're saying that? Because there are a lot of Taiwanese people in the KMT. Are you saying that they are all Chinese? If so, take the people who voted for the KMT in the last presidential cycle, add the people in the TPP, which people also smear as a traitorous pro-China party, then heck, 60% of Taiwan is Chinese. So the Taiwanese are actually in the minority, the ones that identify as Taiwanese and want to be independent. So you can either have a Taiwanese Taiwan or you can have a democratic Taiwan. Currently, you cannot have both. So, and the it basically the in the legislature, the all the legislators who are blocking the defense purchase right now, they're voted in by a totally democratic institution. So if you're complaining about them exercising what they see as their duty, you're being anti-democratic. I don't know how else to put it.
Oh, but that never stopped us before.
I guess fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, I think what's interesting now though is that for the longest time, as long as I've been aware, that the U.S. represented a certain kind of constant in the world, whereas China was the sort of variable, because America was sort of unfailingly reliable. It was sort of the backbone of the entire global order, whereas China was trying to find its way in this order. It was volatile, let's say. But now, it's flipped I think it's really flipped in a lot of ways, where at least we can say for sure that the United States has become very volatile, politically volatile, socially unstable, mentally unstable.
Yeah.
And I'm curious because I'll tell you, I'm sitting here in the belly of the beast, and everyone here knows it. All American people know it. The elites are starting to finally acknowledge that everyone knows it. All the files have come out. I think what prompted me to reach out to you really was some of your takes on Epstein and what's been going on there. But what I'm really curious about is, like, what is the view from outside the United States? And I think Taiwan's view is especially interesting because I I think that Taiwan's viewpoint or perspective on America is something we really take for granted. Like, around the world, Taiwan's one place where we just take for granted that everyone there is, like, dyed in the wool, red, white, and blue, pro America. And what does it look like? What does it look like to see all this crazy Epstein shit come out, and on top of everything else, on top of the kidnapping of Maduro, on top of the support for Israel, all that stuff, but now with Epstein as almost a connecting thread?
So I would say that pan-green media has been pretty disappointing in terms of facing up to all this, because they don't want to see it. And especially on social media, actually, you have seen some totally flabbergasting takes where people are so gaslit and so pro-US in unreasonable way that they defend America in every way possible. I've actually seen people say on Greenland, yeah, Trump is right to take it. Of course he has the right to take it because it's strategically important. Denmark is such a small country. Denmark is not going to be able to keep Greenland safe from Chinese and Russian infiltration. So I'm just like, listen to yourself. You're talking about the Americans just swooping in to take a totally unrelated country, but you think that China doesn't have a right over Taiwan. It just seems so completely opposite. And it really underlines the point that the pan-greens, the pro-American pan-green, pro-independence people in Taiwan, they don't have a principled stance about democracy and freedom or any of it. They're just pro-America and anti-China. And that's becoming a really, really stupid point of view to hold when you look at the relative power structure of the US versus China, especially when we're so close to China and so far from the United States.
So if I understand your take here, it's that basically the U.S. can to a certain faction the U.S. can basically do no wrong.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that
Hmm.
is I would call them the 40%, might be the 35% now. I don't know how quickly reality is chipping in on that particular bubble. But yeah, they're the ones that still think that if you go to China, you might get your organ harvested, and that people there are still so poor and backwards, and everything else is propaganda, and their
Mm.
missiles are full of water, and all the rest of it. So they basically survive by living in an information bubble. And for the rest of the people, I listen to a lot of pan blue media. I think they're just completely outraged. They're actually pretty aligned with Chinese media on this point. It's like they're just like, well, this is the U.S. emperor has no clothes moment, right? Because
How do you distinguish though? How do you distinguish their camp as being based on principle? Though I think principle is on their side here, obviously. But how do you distinguish between sort of partisan bias on the part of the DPP versus principled take on the part of the pan blue? Do you know what I'm asking?
I
Like,
would say that every side is vulnerable to partisanship and becoming unprincipled in order to defend your core beliefs. But the fact that the Pan Greens have strayed so far from a principled stance that shows that it's becoming really, really difficult to square their core
mhm,
beliefs of America being the reliable and just underwriter of our worldview with the reality right now. They have
huh,
strayed from their principle, not because necessarily that they're bad people and I'm good, we're good people. It's not like that. It's like we're in a time and space right now where it simply is very painful to be where they are because
right.
it's so hard to square the circle. And so fewer and fewer people are doing it, but the ones that are really painful to behold. And I don't want to say that, hey, if things were turned around, maybe people on my side would also be doing that painful squaring the circle thing. Maybe they would be, but they're not right now because um, right now it's just reality is very hard to square with a pan green worldview.
What about you personally? Because you were, I take it, as particulate like in the 2000s era or whenever it was that you were living in the U.S. But you're sort of a true believer. You were a true believer of sort of liberal cosmopolitan America,
Yeah, well,
and
I would say that I came of age in the United States politically because I went to the States for college. And before that, I didn't really pay attention to politics. And after that, in the States, I became what I call an NPR liberal. Do you know what I mean when I say that,
yeah,
right?
tote bag liberal.
I carry the tote bag. I
Hmm.
drank the oat latte, and I would hop around quite a bit, but always within that centrist band of
Hmm.
the political compass. So
And you were like in Los Angeles or something,
yeah, I was in
or
Los
San.
Angeles, and before that, I was in
Uh,
Massachusetts. I've been I lived in several places. I lived in Taiwan for a while, but even when I lived in Taiwan, I felt like I was insulated in a U.S. bubble, and it's quite easy being insulated in that U.S. bubble in Taiwan because there is an American bubble here. If you hang out with the U.S. based people who are the expat layer here in Taiwan, it you don't really even need to speak Chinese. I mean, obviously, I do anyhow, and I do it as a part of my work, but plenty of people just exist in that layer. And so I feel
right.
like my first day in Taiwan, I actually, politically, I was definitely anti China, but that's just because that's the default American position, right? Um, I wouldn't even say I was anti China. I want to put a bit more nuance on it. My point of view tracked very closely with the establishment American point of view. So it started with China can be a good partner. China will inevitably liberalized. This is what I used to say when people say, well, have you been to China? Have you gone and take a look? I was like, well, I'm sure it's just going to get better and better as they liberalize more and become more democratic. So I won't go now. I'll just go later. And and then later, when it came to be that they're obviously not going in that direction, then I would say to people, "Oh no, I missed the window for going to Taiwan. I miss going to China. I miss China's golden age, and now it's terrible. It'll never be good again."
Uh-huh.
So my
When was that? Was that like the rise of Xi Jinping in
Yeah,
that era,
definitely.
or
I felt like with the rise of Xi Jinping, but even like
that he was going to be a hardliner
yeah.
and everything was going to go
But I
right?
remember even in the 2010s, like I worked with Next Media Animation. My job was in a big part of my job was basically to bash the panda, right? So Next Media Animation was the animated department of Jimmy Lai's media empire.
Okay,
So we did those motion captured animation, and
I remember those. Yeah,
yeah, so
those were really good actually.
yeah, I love
Uh,
that job. What can I say? It's really fun. Basically, we go through the news, try to make it funny. At first, we try to do it more seriously, but we realized the mocap animation just wasn't up to trying to be serious because it would be funny
right.
anyhow.
But it was somewhere in between.
Yeah,
It was
we
like
kind of
it was serious enough where like it was just very funny because you got the feeling like at some level it was serious.
Yeah, it was
So
kind of an
it's
edit.
quite
It's
funny.
more like an editorial cartoon come to life
Yeah,
than anything
yeah.
else. So that was the most fun job I ever had. I enjoyed it a lot. It had some bangers, but yeah, it's very clear. The boss that most directly supervised me was Mark Simon, who is Jimmy Lai's right hand man. So he would just go on and on and on about how bad China is. And of course, if you're pitching your ideas to the boss, all the China bad ideas got the fast lane. So yeah, that was what I did
Th-
for a long
do
time.
these people still exist? I know Jimmy Lai's in
No,
prison now, but like, is there such a like are these people still
no,
active?
no. Next media
Mm.
animation.
I mean, not them specifically, but I'm saying like that type of person, that layer, that expat layer, as you put it.
Yeah, they're definitely there, and it's
Mhm.
actually quite awkward for me socially in Taiwan right now because I broke so decisively from that layer. I would say it's been about a year now, maybe less than a year, and it's definitely impacted me socially. I've had people I've known since my first day in Taiwan, like people I've known for decades, people I consider like very, if not close, then at least staunch friends. Like, you have a history, and they've turned around and started calling me, what is it? The surrender monkey British guy.
The surrender monkey British guy.
Second World War, you're like Chamberlain.
Oh,
You're
oh, oh, oh,
Chamberlain.
Chamberlain.
That's
Yeah,
right. You're Neville Chamberlain. You're
yeah,
Taiwan's Neville
yeah.
Chamberlain. I was like,
Right,
what
right.
are you talking about? And
Do they call Keir Starmer Chamberlain
I don't know, but it's just
because he was there kissing the ring? You
it's
know,
a it no
like
it
I
doesn't
guess what I'm asking is I'm curious how they're coping with one stuff like um, Carney and Keir Starmer and all their sort of flipping on China and sort of like the disgrace of the United States. Like
well.
how do they cope with
How
this?
does Anne Applebaum cope with it? Right? They just say bad
Hmm.
things about Trump, but they treat him like an anomaly. They treat him like the plague, and it's going to pass, and everything's going to go back to normal. Those people don't seem to realize there's no normal to go back to.
They also don't seem to understand that, like, the Epstein stuff is not really implicating Trump as much as it's implicating
So
really
true,
high
right?
placed Democrats. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It to me,
like Larry Summers, like Catherine Remler, like, these people are
right?
squarely in their camp. Even Noam Chomsky.
I
I don't know if
know, I
maybe
know.
he's too left for them, but
But he obviously has this ability to form like this OR network that transcends all the visible divisions in our world. And that's what part of what made him powerful. There's this layer two that sits above the layer one, where we have things like democracy and elections and primaries and the free press. But above that layer one, there is a layer two. And Epstein, if you go through his emails, you'll find again and again he refers to Davos and other people refers to Davos pretty much as his own private fiefdom. So how many Davos forums did Epstein make an appearance in? What official position did he hold? Nothing. He's not officially connected to Davos at all, but it was his personal playground. So I feel like what Epstein reveals is it's not even so much about the sex stuff. Of course, that's disgusting, but that's how he got exposed. What is truly troubling and has really, for me, worldview changing implication is the fact that all this democracy, all this process that we see is partially a facade. I want to say partially because I'm not saying that, the lizard people controls everything, but they do have this control in this there's too much power in the West that's hidden in the shadows. And it
yeah.
actually is very, in a terrible way, this kind of power is complementary to democracy. Let me unpack it for you. Think about it. With democracy, you have everything out in the open, very public, very transparent, very connected to the people. And then you have another power center that is completely hidden, connected to the money and the elites. And unlike the democracy, which holds all the power overtly, but that power is trammeled in all sorts of ways. Like a president, even the president, the top guy, he only gets 4 years. He has to worry about his midterm in 2 years. And then the last 2 years, he's called a lame duck. And he has to worry about where he's going to land post his presidency, if it's his second term, right? So the official power is limited in all sorts of ways. And some of it is good, right? It's to prevent tyranny. So you have the separation of powers. But if the power that is overt is limited in so many ways, hampered in so many ways, it does leave room for this second layer to come in with power that's covert and that can last through the presidential cycles and ensure this continuity. And I think that's really dark. A lot of people say a big cope on Twitter was, oh, we can't we can't even think how dark the Chinese Epstein files would be.
Oh,
And
I
we'll
saw
never
that
see
tweet.
that.
That was a perfect tweet. That was so perfect because it reveals sort of how our coping mechanism is like, okay, how it's kind of like it's kind of like we're, no matter what happens to us, we're the baseline.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And but the order of the world is still the same, meaning that everyone is still below us, like worse than us. And so if we're shown to be run by a pedo ring of murderers
Imagine
and
how
child rapists,
bad their pedo ring is.
right? Imagine the Chinese Epstein, how bad that is. And I feel like that was the most transparent piece of cope I saw online. Out
Yeah,
of all
but
this,
the thing
I
is,
mean, what does
in
China have to do with
China,
this?
there is no structural role for a pedo ring like this, because they're very clear about the
At least not at the top.
no. Well, yeah, there's all sorts of
I'm
stuff
sure it
that goes
exists in
through. Yeah.
places like it. I'm sure it exists in places because I think some aspects of this pedo ring bring to mind not pedo rings, but like the
Well,
way business was done.
I think the
In
clearest parallel I see is the Xiaohonglo case, the Red House case in Shanghai, right? And that was a local official who wined and dined other officials and business people in this house with a lot of girls, and some of the girls, like, you know, might not have been like whatever. So that was a huge scandal. He got I forgot if he got the death penalty or whatever. But anyhow, it was extremely harsh punishment when it was found out. And I think that tends to be because authority at the top is so consolidated and so continuous, it doesn't leave room for the second layer to creep in. And
they are the second layer. I feel like
yeah, yeah.
the advantage to, and this was, it's funny that Chomsky got taken down in all of this because there are things who he's gone quite out of style recently, but the that guy Slavoj Žižek, he used to say this, and this is what first drew me into sort of like leftist politics. I wouldn't call myself a leftist, but I do find a lot of leftist politics interesting. He was saying in like the 2000s and 2010s that eventually Europe in particular is going to need to need to re-embrace a form of communism because the world's problems are just too big for liberal democracy to handle. Kind of like what you're saying.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
and uh,
Go on.
No, and it was just ironic because I don't think that his prediction was that the world would become more Sinocentric as it's becoming, but I do think it fits his sort of like prophecy there, which is that maybe it is a sort of like a one party communist state like China that is able to actually handle global governance, which I know that China is supposedly a very reluctant state, and they don't seek to replace the United States, and they don't want to recreate the system of global hegemon. But I feel like almost by necessity, they're starting to have to take over a lot of the stuff that the United States used to be relied upon because we just can't do it anymore.
We're
And we refuse to do it. And we're trying to not only that, but we're trying to actively destroy it all.
Well, it is interesting, isn't it? We're looking at things through a sovereign time. If you took the time back to, I don't know, 1991 or whatever, then things seems completely another way, right? It seems like the Western liberal order is completely vindicated and it will last forever, and communism has been, or any kind of form of authoritarianism, totalitarianism, are destined to go into the dustbins of history. And of course that was wrong. So I think China is, i wouldn't I wouldn't say that they're right, but I think they're cautious for a reason. They don't want to step into the United States shoes because they see that it's a role that's filled with a lot of traps, and their longevity, and even in a way their integrity, because they promise they will not become a hegemon. Deng Xiaoping promised that, would be impinged if they did try to step into that role. But they do want there to be a world order. They don't want to be China plus, hell in a handbasket, right? They want China and a orderly world. Now, who is going to enforce that order? A lot of people are looking to China. China is saying no, no, no. But if not China, then who? I think that is the big question here. And I don't have the answer, but I think that sovereign countries are going to have to realize you're not going to be China's vassal or client. You're not going to be China's little brother, but China will be willing to help you in certain ways to stand on your own 2 feet. But you have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, right?
Yeah, I think, but the what I'm starting to see, I believe, is okay. Like for example, there is a relatively new TV show out, which is it's a terrible show, but it's very interesting. I think it's a CCTV show, so it's like official state television, and it's called Qiji. Have you heard of this
Gigi,
Miracle?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
I haven't seen it, but I've seen it around Twitter. I haven't watched it.
oh Qiji. Okay, you should watch it. It's not very good, but it's very interesting because it is essentially um it's essentially promoting um well, it's a promoting Shenzhen, right? It's all stories in and around Shenzhen and the sort of like economic miracle era. Um, and the first episode is really it's about an older woman whose son owes his commercial landlord a bunch of money, and he had his office locked up. And in order to pay off the landlord debt, she starts delivering food surreptitiously, but she takes a job delivering food, and it's a horrible job, and she's got to run upstairs and exhaust herself. And one of her coworkers, in trying to inspire her to keep going, quotes Adam Smith, unironically. I was like, what the fuck? And then the second or third episode, the second episode is about a guy who is selling yak insurance in Tibet and convinces everyone that insurance is a really good thing. And then the third episode or fourth episode is about the history of the Shenzhen Stock Exchange and how the stock exchange prior to this guy who regulated the markets and everything. The stock market was a really dangerous sort of like black market kind of place where people lost all their money because they were tricked. Compared to the central, and they were like, we're going to implement centralized trading on December 1st, and now the stock market is sort of regulated, dependable, and a really good and so they were sort of glazing the Shenzhen stock market. I have nothing against this, by the way. I'm just saying, and I'm like, people should actually buy Chinese stocks this year, but
Well,
it was just interesting the themes and how they changed to become, I would say, very not just pro capitalism, but pro financialization.
yeah, that is interesting. I think the first one sounds a little bit whack, but the second and third one sounds kind of like I don't know. They sound interesting actually, and
It is interesting. It's a very different change
yak
in value. Yeah.
insurance. You got to insure those
Yes.
yaks, right?
No, it's a famous actor. I forgot to say his name is Huka, I think, and he goes and is trying to convince this older Tibetan yak herder that she should let him tag all her yaks, and she's like, no, he's scared of you, and he goes, what's the yak's name? And she's like, Nyonyo. The yak's name is Nyonyo. And he's like, my daughter's name is Nyonyo. And he shows her the picture of his daughter. And he's like, I love Nyonyo. And that's Nyonyo. I love her, Nyonyo too. I'm going to protect her. I'm here to protect. And it was this whole thing about how the insurance salesman is there to like love the herd as if it were his own baby. And I was like, this is so absurd. This is fucking crazy. I love it, but it's crazy. Like, this is CCTV? Like, what the fuck is going on? It's very crazy.
No, it's interesting. If it's CCTV, it's a message that they're trying to send. So, yeah. It's interesting. I do see that I'm gonna talk to some economists on my channel about this, but I'm really trying to pick out to what extent China is still like socialism or communism is it's so centralized, but it's what kind of beast is this system? I feel like we don't have a good name for it. I don't feel like we have a good handle on it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to check it out, and it's changing all the time too. I do feel like they're starting to notice that they've gotten big enough that, especially internationally, they have to learn how to be good neighbors. During Davos, actually, the Chinese participant made a speech about how China is going to start importing too, and that's going to be important because
That was a huge. That was a big. It was under. I'm glad you brought that up because that was kind of overshadowed by Carney, but I thought that was a huge statement that people should really think about.
well, I
You
think
know.
there's a bad tendency in the West to assume that whatever China is doing is what China has to be doing forever. But here's where I think the communism actually helps the Marxism because they, whether or not they're still following Marx, let's not even go deep into it. But the fact that they have Marx as a paradigm in their heads, anyhow, at least they learned that theory at one point in time, is they don't see there as being there has to be a right way to do something for all time. They don't feel like this policy has to be the perfect policy for all time. They see China as going through historical stages, and that one set of policy will be appropriate for one stage and then fall out of usefulness for another stage. So this is what I think people don't get. So they're not going to keep doing something forever, even if they go in big for it right now. So I think they're correcting now from being very export oriented and very supply chain oriented. I think they'll continue to be very tech oriented, but I think they are going to pivot to consumption and they are going to encourage more import.
Yeah. Which, just offhand, I think that means people should look to own some Chinese investment assets
Yeah, I
now.
think so. I think that's well. The
Yeah.
thing is, with the U.S., you've had such steady returns over such a long amount of time. It's hard to get off that train, but you don't know what you're sitting on. You just don't know. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Also, I mean, I will say this that in this is an aside. I don't mean to go down this path, but I do want to mention it. Is that in the Western financial world, China is still considered an emerging market, and there's what I would say an emerging market discount
uh huh,
in the sense that Chinese equities in particular and the Chinese assets are considered somewhat dangerous because an emerging market is one where you can put money in, but you may not be able to get it back out.
yeah,
And the speech um, that you were pointing to was, I think, a big signal to say that you should not expect as an international investor that there should be any more surprise capital controls or limits on your ability to get money either in or out. China is here for you to invest. The government stands behind the notion that um, RMB should be internationalized, meaning you should be able to buy RMB assets without fear of being able to repatriate that stuff. So
well, we'll see about
just
that.
mentioning that.
I'm
Yeah,
Taiwanese, and there's been so many Taiwanese businessmen who had a bunch of their money frozen in China that I think
yeah,
it's up for them to prove. But for me personally, as a small retail investor, I definitely have no fear. And also, who knows? It's like, yeah, my money's in China. Well, I'm in Taiwan. I'm fine.
yeah.
I feel like it's less of an issue, but I can see how for bigger institutional investors, that's still a risk. We have to acknowledge that.
Yeah. Um, the the thing with that, and I do want to get back to the U.S. for a sec, but like just my view of China right now is that
They're the grown up in the room.
they are the grown up in the room. However, I would say as an American that to be honest, I do detect a certain amount of Chinese exceptionalism going on.
Say more.
And I think that the Chinese believe they can essentially do run their economy in the same manner in many ways as the US at its prime. I'm not the US of now, but the US of, like, let's say the 80s or 90s, and not run into the same social and political problems that we did,
Hmm.
and because of Chinese culture. And I would caution that I think China is liberalizing a lot faster than people think, because I believe that Xi Jinping is providing quite a bit of cover here, just like Ronald Reagan provided a lot of cover for the liberalization of America in the 1980s. He's like Reagan. People hate it when I make this comparison, but I'm just saying in this sense, Xi Jinping allows China to liberalize because he's never facing in that direction. And I would say China's liberalizing at a surprisingly fast clip because they have to, that their economy is constrained. It's a
Do you
constrained
mean
economy, like all
socially
economies.
or economically?
At first, socially, at first economically, but very quickly, especially when you start to transition to a consumer economy, which they're trying to do, and are having a little bit of a hard time stoking consumerism in China because Chinese people don't really feel comfortable buying stuff on credit like we do. They still have good habits that need to be eradicated. That socially it will follow, and you'll see it through mostly the transmission mechanism is marketing and PR, and that's going to change people. It's going to change the culture. That's my view as an American. People think I'm wrong, but I think that it's going to happen faster than people think. And China is, in fact, liberalizing very fast under Xi Jinping.
I personally don't see it. I see liberalism.
Nobody sees it. Nobody sees it.
I see.
But because I might be wrong, but
I see
I think
liberalism.
that it's
I
you
think it
can't
all
you
depends on how you define liberalism. I'm sure you're right in
yeah.
some respects, but I think liberalism is just too big a bag. Okay, too big a bag, and I think China is definitely going to be more liberal in many ways, but in some others don't. I more
I will say this. I think, for example, that the artist Ai Weiwei,
yeah.
he is now saying that he feels much more comfortable in Beijing than he does in Berlin because Berlin is sliding back to authoritarianism, right wing stuff.
Yeah.
I would say that a lot of people I know who were sort of fairly hardline anti-China in the 2010s, 2000s, I see a lot of them becoming much more pro-China these days. Not least because like a guy like Ivy Vase, he sees that it would be stupid to ignore the market, and the market is heading towards China, and he's an artist and
Hmm.
he sells his wares. But I do think that what he said about China is fundamentally true. That the culture is actually liberalizing very fast, and people like him actually feel comfortable in China. And it's not because he's becoming regime pilled or anything, but it's because China itself is actually on the
I, I
ground
would I would
liberalizing.
just put different language to that. I think China is becoming more confident. And when you are more confident, I don't think you need to crush dissent as hard. So is that liberalization or is that just maturation? I'm not sure.
I would predict that it's liberalization because there is, I think, the connection to consumerism is very profound. This isn't like a minor shift. This is a major shift in the sense that, fundamentally, like, I just don't think that you can work Chinese people this hard for that long without a promise of, like, you're going to have a better life in terms of
Does
your ability to enjoy wealth.
well does is that liberalism though? Why can't they find their
Yes.
own way to a more consumerist, richer life in a way that isn't liberalism?
Because, well, that's the question. Maybe they could, but am very skeptical
I
of that.
just feel like there's more than one way to do modernity. And for all our lives, we were told there's one way to do the economy, there's one way to do modernity. And I think China's definitely shown that there's more than one way to do the economy. I don't even know what that is yet. I'm still wrapping my mind around it. But I'm also fairly sure that there's more than one way to do modernity. Let me give you just one aspect that I feel pretty certain is going to stick. I think that China is not going to go for the globalized culture. They're going to stick with their iteration of the Chinese culture. And I feel pretty certain in that because that's the way that it's been going. And it's more and more the way the younger and younger you go. So Xi Jinping, right? Let's count back from Xi Jinping. He's the boomer generation. And I call them the boomer unks. They're like carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. They've experienced the the hard times, China's true hard times. So they're very paranoid, and that paranoia serves them well. But then after that comes the Gen X generation, and those Gen X in China are very, very, very liberal. I would say they are the most liberal generation. They're the most pro-Western generation. The elder millennials and the Gen X, maybe they've made a lot of money as China liberalized and joined the WTO. You can call them the WTO generation. So they're going to be the most liberal generation. Then after that comes the millennial and the Gen X, and the younger you go, I'm telling you, the more wolf warrior. I was in China last year, and it was so clear because I talked to as many people as I could. I talked to the boomer unks who were driving the ride shares. I talked to people. I met up with people, and it just seems like the younger you get, the more pro China, the more wolf warrior ish. And you also have to understand.
But to be clear, I don't mean that they're going to turn anti-China. I mean liberal in this sense. I think I mean it in the
I
sort of
think you
pure
just
sense,
shouldn't.
not in the
I
pro-liberal
just don't
democracy.
think
Yeah.
you can use the word liberal because it comes with too much baggage.
Oh, I think all the baggage attaches. I mean, that's why I'm using it. I think that the
well, then you
the
can't
trick.
say that liberal doesn't mean anti-China because I think liberal in a way does mean
No, no, no.
anti-China.
No, no. I mean, well, yeah, you're right. I think liberal is a vague word, but I'm using it in a specific way here for a reason. I do think that the West is becoming much more illiberal. Fair. I mean, I do think that the idea of a liberal West is dying,
Yeah, that's probably true.
and so that's why and I think Ai Weiwei is an example. I think of how liberalism, as a true set of values, and I'm not knocking liberalism per se. I'm just saying that it's a thing. I'm saying that the center of that is actually moving towards China and away from the West. And that's why a guy like him is out in the Western media glazing his a bit,
Yeah,
glazing
I
China
just
because
wouldn't use those vocabulary. I would say that confidence is moving towards China, and
no,
I
but
would.
I'm specifically using that vocabulary because that I think it really is a shift in values, and it's necessary because I don't think everything that China, like the leadership. Here's the thing about Chinese exceptionalism that I don't buy is that China is so strong that they can just choose their path of development as they wish. I think, in fact, their decision making, like all big, massive, states, is severely constrained by reality, and that's why they're doing things that they don't really, in the past, never felt comfortable doing, but sort of have to now, like internationalizing the currency. That's really shocked a lot of people. The statements that have been coming out and the sudden shift towards consumer and its consumer economy, when in the past there was this strong denial of anything such as like overcapacity or deflation problems. Like they're starting to run into issues, and I would say it's corroborated by people that I know, like I sometimes think vibes is more in some respects more important than data. And I would say it seems to be, at least the anecdotal vibes that I'm getting from people in China, and I don't mean expats, but like people, who uh, are native to there, has turned a little quite rather sour lately in terms of job prospects, in terms of the wealth destruction of their housing equity and all this stuff. Like, it's not super good times over there.
No, no, it's not.
So that's what I'm saying. I guess what I'm saying is I think China is making decisions that it may not, that they're actually going against some of the things that they used to believe in, because out of necessity, in order to keep the economy expanding. And that is almost necessarily leading them down a development path that's actually similar to the United States, maybe 30 or 40 years ago. And but nobody, I don't know, I find a lot of resistance to this idea, even though I think it's undeniable. And that's why I say people should go into Chinese stocks, because it's bound to take off. I don't know if this makes any sense, but
Well, I think it just, I think people would like to think that China can avoid the mistakes of the United States. Maybe they can't.
yeah.
I don't know, but I would like to think that. So maybe it's just my wishful thinking. But I don't see the ideological embrace of liberalism and financialization. And I'd like to think that the Chinese government will always be wary of it and make sure that it doesn't reach the crazy level that it came to be in the United States. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll always want to eat that cookie. Maybe you can't stay away from that marshmallow because the consequences are coming like 30 or 40 years later, right?
That's what I'm saying. You should watch this Chi show. It's crazy. The messaging in this is pretty. It's a very like sugar coated. This is what I was describing it to my wife. Is like, this show reads to me. It's like sugar coated. It's so, everything about it is so lighthearted and silly. But that's because the messaging underneath it is actually quite radical. In that, the heroes of this are landlords, venture capitalists, and stock exchange managers. It's very strange, in my opinion, but it's things are changing. I think things are changing, and not least because I feel like the sort of the more illiberal. Maybe this is where I want to move the discussion towards, is the increasingly illiberal nature of the West, and now with Epstein, not just like as a recent phenomenon, but the sort of like parallax revision. Like, there's a certain way that we now have to revise our understanding of America in the mid to late 90s onwards. Because a lot of this stuff goes back to the 90s.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like, it wasn't that we were liberal and then this, Trump happened, but this was all happening throughout the 90s too. I mean, this was the reality of America at its height that's being uncovered. And so there is like a vacuum. There's like a power vacuum, or some kind of like, maybe not even a power vacuum, but like a legitimacy vacuum.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the US
I think you
is
can
creating.
definitely say that, because if you just look at the files as they go back. I mean, in the UK already, you have Mandelson, right? Resigning from his post. It's a huge scandal. But it's multinational. It's like the biggest scandal, and it's international. And I'm almost like waiting to see what the reaction is going to be in America, because if there are no prosecutions, if there are no people stepping down, people are just going with business as usual. What does that say about society? It's basically saying, yeah, we're okay. We're okay with the fact that everything, our institutions are a sham, and it's all just people controlling America from the shadows. But if you do have a reckoning, it's going to be so painful because everybody's in the files. So yeah, I don't really know what's going to happen.
I don't think anything's going to happen.
Yeah, probably.
I don't mean that to be like unnecessarily cynical, but I think what you were saying about layer 2, I think is spot on, because I mean, imagine like you do become a prominent, like a very powerful politician in America, like a JD Vance.
Yeah.
And you come from basically nothing, and then find yourself on top of the most powerful country, not just like in the world, but maybe in history. How do you exercise that power? Like what guidance, set of principles do you have to now wield that power? And there is none, because it's a system that has no governing ideology beyond, at that level. There's nothing to guide you at that level.
I will actually flip it. I would put it this way. There's 1,000 guys like JD Vance, maybe tens of thousands, and they're all striving. They're all making way up layer 1, right? They're all trying to get to the top of layer 1, and they're all striving, and it's a hard job, and there's a lot of competition. And along, somebody taps you on the shoulder from layer 2 and say, how would you like a warp zone that gets you from here to way over there? How would you like that? But then you have to make the devil's bargain, right? You are now a part of this network, and you're beholden to this network. And you're basically trading incredible advancement that would probably never come your way, even after a lifetime of hard work, in exchange for being puppeted. And I think a lot of
how
people
did the
make
network
that
come to place? That's my question. It's like, yes, I agree, but how did that network come to be? Like, how did it become a pedo ring?
Well, okay, I'm going to get into some stuff that I don't even necessarily believe myself. Part of me thinks, well, maybe it's just because there are lots of these little networks, right? And just Epstein happened to be a pedo, so that's why he was caught. But there's another.
Whoa! Let's hold off for 1 second, because this is very interesting. Let's do this on the bonus side, if that's okay.
Okay, does that work? No worries. Yeah, we can. Right. We can, for the deep conspiracy, you have to be a subscriber.
All right, let's go deep conspiracy. And so we'll do this in part 2 of the podcast. If you want access to part 2 and other bonus episodes, go to patreon.com/PlanetMag. Angelica, I don't know if you're back on, but I might have muted you by accident. If you can hear this, you might have to unmute yourself. It's the button next to your name.
Can you hear me now?
Ah, there you go. Yep.
I was like, hey, what's going on? But that's good. I finished my kanji, so we can.
Okay, perfect. And whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. This is part 2 of a 2-part podcast. The first part is on the free feed. I have the privilege of talking with Angelica today about the craziness of the Epstein scandal era United States. What's going on here? We were talking in the first part about just sort of the perspective from Taiwan, from outside the United States. We talked a bit about China, but I kind of wanted to get back into your hardcore conspiracy theories about how this came to be. Like what causes there to be a pedo ring at the top, and it's something that we've long suspected here in America, but now we know for a fact, and it's just, it's almost not really like a revelation here in the United States. It's more of a lot of people going, "Yeah, I kind of knew it. Now I really know it."
Well, yeah. I mean, I used to work in a restaurant kitchen, and there'll always be these guys talking about these conspiracy theories, right? Because line cooks love that shit. And I was always the one who's like, no, that's crazy. You guys are such conspiracy theorists. And no, I'm just like, man, they were like, I'm sure not everything is correct, but, I have to apologize to the conspiracy theorists in my life because
Sure.
there's a lot that panned out. And so let's get back to our layer one versus layer two distinction, right? Layer one is everything that we can see, everything that's legible in the world. This is how you get ahead. This is how you get your resume. This is what you need to do to get to the next level. This is how you win an election. That's all out in the open. But there's this whole other layer that is kind of above layer one. And if you're a power network in that layer, like Jeffrey Epstein's layer was a layer, then all of the divisions that seem so ironclad in layer one just ceases to matter. He pulls from the Democrats. He pulls from the Republicans. He's got Steve Bannon in his network. He's got Noam Chomsky in this network. You wouldn't think that these people have anything in common, but they all come together to be a part of Jeff's network. And how can that be? Well, maybe you can say they're all pedos and he offers them girls or whatever it is they want, right? Maybe if it's a different kind of contact, he'll offer like the kid at Ivy League admission, right? I think that was one of the funniest things. Apparently, one of Woody Allen's daughters, he managed to wrangle a Bard admission for. So he's
I heard
really
about
like
that. Yeah.
he's really like Mr. Fix-It. Yeah, he Bill went to him for STD drugs so that he can slip them into Melinda's surreptitiously to cure her STDs that he gave her. But he also went to Epstein for Adderall so that Bill can go to his bridge tournament extra focused. So you're just like, wow, there's a way in which he's Mr. Fix-It on so many levels. But I think the extra thing that being a pedo network brings is like this unshakable bond, right? If you've done something really bad together, then there's a level of trust in you're a member of this brotherhood almost that's unbreakable. That's why it's a very common mafia thing, right? Until you killed somebody, you're not really a member. You're not really core.
Yeah, because we have mutual blackmail on each other.
Exactly. So
And now we have this sort of like, we may not trust each other, but we're like forced to trust each other now.
exactly, it's a coordinating mechanism because if it's going to be a secret society, the first thing you need to ensure is loyalty. And so I think that could be a role that the pedophilia might take, and
Sure.
it's really terrible, right? Because imagine, right, those girls are almost like lambs at the sacrificial table of this. They are crimes being done upon them is the initiation ritual. So of course it's terrible, but it also makes sense. Yeah, I think that's probably how I would contextualize that pedophilia. I'm sure there are other networks out there maybe that are light on pedophilia. I don't know because this is also how they got caught, right? This is also how they finally got exposed. Or is it, right? There are other conspiracy theories. There's layers to this, and maybe the Jeffrey Epstein network was losing a hop, and the younger networks are outing them. I don't know. I guess I don't know what to believe anymore because the world is so crazy.
Yeah, I guess the assumption is that there's like hundreds of Jeffrey Epsteins out there. That it's not just, it wasn't just this one guy, but in fact, there's still active Jeffrey Epsteins out there that are doing the exact same thing,
Yeah, I think
that we don't know about
the
today.
assumption that we have to have is that we now know, we didn't know this not even last month, I would say. We now know for sure, there's evidence for sure that there is a layer two. It controls a good part of politics in the West, maybe even beyond. But we don't know how big that layer two is. We don't know how many Epsteins are running around, because they're all still hidden. We just have this little. It's almost like Truman's world, how Truman's little boat touches the edge of the world. Like before, he was just suspicious. But that moment when his boat touches the edge of the set, that was his whole life. That was when he knew for sure, right? And I feel like we just had that contact
Yeah,
moment.
we're like, wait, what?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
What?
right.
And
Yeah.
there's so many.
Which is funny. Have you noticed that the Ed Harris meme from Truman Show has been going pretty? It's been pretty heavy rotation these days.
No, no, I haven't, but it makes sense
It's
because yeah,
it's that he's got he's the director, and so it'll just go online. They'll post the Ed Harris's face from that movie, and he's just sort of like calling out events, like, all right, release the files now. Show now, but redact all the stuff, redact all the names, dump another set of files, retract them. Like
it
the whole thing seems manipulated.
it does seem weird, doesn't it? Because they say, oh yeah, we're gonna release these files, but we're redacting it to protect the victims, but obviously a lot of the redactions has nothing to do with the victims. And what is the process to get them unredacted, right? There is none. It just seems like, well, there was a lot of pressure, so we'll release these files, but there are more. We're just not releasing them. Who decides how much to release and not release, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But enough has been released that whoever decided this was going to be released, I'm just wondering what their head is at, because enough have been released to basically, I think the world is changed by these revelations, because
Yes.
the one thing that the United States had over the rest of the world is they had what China calls 话语权, right? You can call it, it literally means the right to speak, but I like to translate it as narrative authority.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, there is only one reality, but the interpretation of that reality into a narrative, there can be 100 million subjective interpretations of the truth.
Yeah.
And the United States had a monopoly, or the West generally had a monopoly on their interpretation of the truth.
The sort of foundational narrative that all the other narratives sit within.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
so even if they can make mistakes, somehow it comes back to, oh yeah, we make mistakes, but we are the good guys. So when good guys make mistakes, we can just make some movies about Nam, and then we're good again because we've repented, Whereas,
at heart, we're like Forrest Gump.
Yeah,
like, bad things happen, but we're like innocent. We're trying our best. We're feeling our way through. And
so it basically allows the United States to do all sorts of horrible things and come back from them. It allows them to constantly smear other countries. It allows them to do like really objectively horrible things. Like, think about the decades-long sanction regime on Cuba, right? But they can still be the good guys because they're like, oh, you know what? It's the Fidelistas that are bad. If they're good, they should just surrender and let their people be free. These are freedom sanctions. And so as long as they have that narrative authority, it comes with a certain measure of impunity. But now I think whether or not the people of America wake up, I think they are, by the way. But there's no way after the Epstein file that the rest of the world is going to take being lectured by the Americans. There's no way. So I think,
unless you're the Pan Greens.
yeah, but think about it, right? They are
Uh-huh.
in the minority now, and I don't think they were in the minority before.
Right.
So I think it's going to chew away at them, right? Because here's the thing about the narrative bubble is that to remain within it, you have to constantly shed IQ points. And when you get beyond a certain point, people just start leaving because they can't take it anymore. We all have our
Yeah.
breaking
There's only
point,
so much
right?
copium you can take
Yeah.
before you're like, I can't do this anymore.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
and for each individual, it all depends. Sometimes reality intrudes on your life in a way that's impossible to get away from. So a big part of my awakening is when I saw how badly the DPP was handling the energy issue, right? And I was like, there's nothing more serious than energy. If you're being this bad about energy, it leads me to believe that you're also not serious on defense or anything else, really.
Mm.
And
That's a good point.
from
Yeah.
from that kind of intrusion into my life, because I was an energy reporter, I became open-minded on energy, and I looked at how well China's doing on energy, and I'm just like, wow, if they're doing this well in my domain, I should be open-minded about the fact that they might be also doing really well on other domains too. I just came to the
Yeah.
conclusion over time, yeah, China is a better managed country. Xi Jinping was for real about being anti-corruption, and we've just been fed a lot of narrative. We've just been fed a lot of narrative because America was the narrative engine. And I hate to say it, but for being a career panda basher, I really did not know a lot about China when I was a career panda basher, because I got fed all my information from the United States about what China should be, right, or is. And the information is not granular. It's a lot of it's
Can I ask you a
still
question
narrative.
about that
Yeah,
though?
go on.
This is what I'm curious. Do you think it's you that has changed, or is it actually the what the US has become versus what China has become that realigns your view on them? Do you know what I'm saying? Is it really that your values have changed, or is it that your values are largely the same,
Yeah, I
but
would I
China
would say
comes
it's
to
a
embody them
latter.
better
It's
than
a
the US?
latter.
Uh-huh.
It's I might have changed in some small degree, but I think the
Right.
larger degree is seeing that I was living in an illusion. Like what I was saying before, when you try to do the squaring the circle thing is when your core values and beliefs and outer reality no longer align. So you have to square the circle. And we all
Sure.
do it to some extent, but it becomes very painful if the reality and your inner value narrative is too far apart, right?
Right.
And I think once I realized that my inner narrative doesn't really hold anymore, there was a certain period of collapse and rebuilding, because it's
When was that? When, like, what triggered that?
I think that probably the worst of it was when I was probably around my birthday last year. Probably was the worst of
Oh,
it.
very recently. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that it's a smooth transition of, oh, I recognize now. It's not like in one of those romance drama where you're like, oh, I realized this guy was a bad guy all along and the bad guy was a good guy all along. I'm in love now. It's not like that. It's more of a slow process of rebuilding my identity and
Mhm.
rebuilding. Like I am literally I'm literally the founder of the Taipei chapter of the neoliberals, right? So
Was this caused, do you think, by sort of the Trump restoration and just the sort of stuff that was being said about Taiwan, or
no, I
was it
don't
more
think
than that?
so. No, I
Mhm.
I think that first of all, even before like the May, which is when I here's the thing, right? If it's internal, you don't have to have the existential crisis. So for a long time, even before May last year, I was just like China curious, whatever, but I didn't really super come out as pro China. And I think it's really coming out on Twitter and being attacked and all that. It just kind of really made me had to examine a lot of my beliefs and stuff and kind of rebuild. So it's obviously it's been a longer time than that. Like when I stopped believing in the DPP, I joined the TPP, right? But I would say now I'm more KMT aligned. But it's hard to go
Mm,
straight from DPP to KMT. Like the TPP was the way station,
hmm
but now I'm much more pro KMT. Yeah, it's weird like that.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason I asked that question is just because in that case, you know, doesn't that mean that China is embodying some of the liberal values that you held earnestly before, and it's better to invest that or look for that in China than in the United States, which has become this sort of right wing hellhole? And
Mm,
do you know what I mean? Or that's what I'm saying. Is it that people, because there is and I'm asking this not just as a personal question, but
well,
sort of
actually, I
to
have.
try and get my head
I
around.
would
Sorry,
let me give you
yeah.
one example, right?
hmm
I don't think that. Well, okay. Let's go for a pretty personal example. Whatever. This is the second. Not that many people are going to hear this, but I'm bisexual, right? And that is super a big reason why I did see the rollback in LGBT rights in China before,
hmm
and that was a big reason why I thought China was super oppressive. And
Right.
now I'm just like, yeah, you know what? It sucks probably to be LGBT in China to some extent, but you know what? It's worth it. It's worth it for the other things that are good. So have I become less liberal, or am I just more mature in that I see that there are trade-offs to be made in life?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would say it is what it is. I feel like I actually, in this particular instance, actually, I do think you're right. I think China will become more liberal when it comes to LGBT issues going forward. I don't know how far they'll go, but I do see it happening in that direction.
I think it's unavoidable.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it should be avoided, but I'm saying it's unavoidable. I mean, if you because if you want to, if you want to promote cosmopolitanism, if you want to open up, and they are, I mean, every day it's easier to travel visa free into China, right? Like, if you want to encourage foreign workers to come, like they're doing now, especially from like top Western universities and stuff like that, top foreign universities, of course you're going to have to encourage, you're going to have to foster sort of like international cosmopolitan culture, in places like maybe not all over China. China's a very big place, but in the key big cities that are expecting a lot of foreigners to come, I would think it's unavoidable. You can't be like hostile to LGBTQ and at the same time want to encourage foreigners to come study at your campuses and stuff and work in your tech industry and things like that. It's just not possible.
yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I still think that they'll want to do things their way. And it's like the cost of entry, right? You have a competent country, you have great infrastructure. Do you really need a gay pride parade too? Maybe you don't need the gay pride parade. I mean, I was never huge big into big gay pride parades either. Although I don't know, I can
But
see
I
it being
don't
a stickling point for other people.
I don't well that's the thing. I don't think that the American or the Western, I'm not saying China's going to westernize. I'm saying it's going to liberalize. And so it may not look like the liberal, it may not look like Berlin or San Francisco, but I do think it's going to become more, like, I mean, even maybe take Tokyo or Taipei as an example of the kind of culture that is in, that people who are comfortable in Tokyo might be very comfortable in Shanghai these days.
Well, I think
You know what I mean?
that's just not just these days. Shanghai has always been a very cosmopolitan place. I'm sure it was very, very wild back in the day.
Or maybe now Chongqing or Chengdu or,
Yeah. No, there's
um,
absolutely crazy gay bars that are in Chengdu or whatever.
yeah. Isn't that the sort of Chengdu is sort of, I don't know whether it's accurate or not, but it has sort of a reputation as being the heart of like gay culture
That's what they
in
say.
China.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess in that sense, it serves the same role as like San Francisco did in the United States. So I don't know. I just think you're right to point out that I think the Epstein revelations are probably the largest political scandal of my life.
In my lifetime, yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. And there's really nothing quite
Like it.
even close
Yeah,
to it.
not even
Yeah.
close to it.
In fact, it might be one of the biggest political scandals in modern history because of the breadth of it. I mean, I've never heard of a scandal that was this widespread and over such a long period of time and involved literal Illuminati type shit like this. It is so, it's so damaging that I don't know how the U.S. recovers from this. Like like you said, there almost needs to be a revolution at this point. Though I don't think
I
I
don't
don't think
think
one is waiting in the wings. But
I don't think the US people have it in them. I mean, they are so they'll go to the streets and protest and whatever, but I just don't, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but they're they bought in too much to the idea that we'll just vote the motherfuckers out in the next cycle. And they don't realize that is diffusing their pitchfork energy. They don't have what I call pitchfork energy. Even their protests, even when they're massive, they don't have that edge of danger or instability to them. I don't see them overthrowing Jack.
and even if they did even if we did, like, what would
What would
we
come next,
replace it
right? What
with?
would come
Yeah, what would
next?
come
It's
next?
it's it's such a
Yeah, I think the I think the I think the truth is already known, and we just don't want to admit it. But I think that the dark truth of the United States that people right now know but don't want to admit is that the U.S. is on sort of a full fascist path. I mean, a lot of people say this, but I don't know if they've fully comprehended like how serious it's going to get. But I don't know. I got to say, I think internally in the U.S., the view that the view that Epstein provides, I think, is starting to validate a lot of the fears about sort of like Israeli infiltration of the U.S. at the highest levels, which feeds into a lot of anti-Semitic fears here.
I mean, how can it
And
not, right?
how can it not? Exactly. And now, I've seen a lot of stuff that would in the past be considered anti-Semitic, um, anti-Semitic tropes or anti-Semitic conspiracy theorizing, which is just everywhere now. It's just everywhere. And I can see that being the organizing cause of the quote pitchforks. And now it, I know that it's not one. I think a lot of the warnings about anti-Semitism have been done in bad faith because it's all really in support of Israel and the Israel lobby.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's sort of willing real Nazi shit into existence. You know,
Of
it's like kind of
course.
creating its own enemy. And that, I think, is the path that the United States is going down, coupled with like a fiscal and financial crisis. It's not looking good from my perspective. I think America's heading down a really dark path.
I mean, I don't know. Oh, I wish the best, but a lot of my Chinese friends are saying, "Hey, the United States, we would probably see the United States break up before any other big country, before Russia breaks up or China breaks up.
Mm.
It's because there's a lot of division in there, and I don't know. I don't know if that'll happen, but I definitely see a lot of instability.
Yeah, I don't know about the breaking up part. That I mean, people have pushed that idea. In fact, we've had movies about that.
Mm-hmm.
That um, like that Civil War movie, which I've never watched, but maybe I should. Um, but that almost seems to me like a nice pressure release valve for people to be like, oh well, if things get really bad, we'll just get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I don't know if that's possible. And this, I don't know, like looking at Minnesota and like the way ICE conducts itself and the just like more and more brazen use of raw power in the United States. It's like we're like the liberal era is over. Like there's no long like at least I would say the liberal era. What it does is it's still a fairly hardline society in terms of there being hard rules and hard enforcement of rules. The United States at its liberal height was never a very forgiving society. We was a police state. We had by far the largest prison population in the world. But that was a liberal society, and I think the mark of the liberal society is one where people largely believe, like you said, because of the narrative control,
Mm-hmm.
people largely believe that they have consented to this
Yeah.
or that they have chosen this.
Or
And so
or
even though there's like really ugly, harsh aspects of your society that you simply cannot deny, like for example, the prison population thing, you're kind of like, yeah, but we chose it. Like I consented to that at some point.
yeah.
And so I'm okay with it. I think that era is kind of over in the United States, where it's like more and more you're like, I never consented to any of this shit. I just have to live within the constraints of it. You could see this not just in the politics, you can also see it in careerism. More and more people, particularly young people, but also people of my generation, are starting to lose interest in careerism. They just view it as a job that they need to make cash, but that's it. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no higher sense of career purpose anymore because that narrative's been lost. And I think you're right. Like that narrative is very important. It's not just that someone controls a narrative that surrounds you, but that's like the firmament on which everything rests. Your life is built on top of that narrative. And so the careerism is really the story of most people's lives. Maybe not most people, but the professional class, I would say for sure. People are losing interest in that really fast. Like people just, I mean, including me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I sense that also in, I don't know about Taiwan because as, I don't, I don't know as much, but I feel like the social media presence of Japan online is pretty big. And I sense it in Japan too, that there's like a sort of loss of interest in careerism and striving. I don't know if you would say the same about Taiwan or not,
Oh,
but
for sure. Like people just feel like the deck is rigged against them, and they're just working to. I mean, even in China, I would say people feel like their job is just a grind, and at the end of the grind, they see very little reward, and yeah, it's tough. They feel like that there isn't that sense of infinite possibility that seems to be there, like, let's say before, in the before times, before the property bubble burst or whatever.
The energy, the fervor, the
Yeah,
excitement, the
yeah.
wanting to be part of it, no matter what. Like I'll grind my knuckles to the bone just to be part of it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is
I saw a
funny
video.
because also it's funny because objectively, right, that we're all gotten richer, but why do we all feel so poor? Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I saw. There's a lot of like these Japanese salaryman videos on YouTube these days, and it's
Yeah.
like a day in the life. These guys, and they're very like disaffected and uh bordering on like nihilism, and they're just like they'll just have they'll have their camera on all day, sort of day in the lifestyle, and just be like, look at all these people in the train station. Where are they going? For what purpose? And
Hmm.
then they get to the office and they're like, I'll just sit here and do this for hours. Okay, good. Like, and then I saw a video of a young woman in Shanghai who was working for a fashion company,
Yeah.
and she was like a buyer or something. No, she was like a sales analyst or something, and it was a very similar video. She just sat in the office all day, didn't have much interaction. She ate dinner at her cube. She bought it from 7-Eleven, and then she went home to her tiny studio apartment. And she was like, yeah, you would think working for like a fashion company in Shanghai would be very glamorous, but it's mostly this. Maybe a few years more of this and I can change jobs or whatever. And I was like, damn, I did not expect to see that kind of like that sort of like disaffected um that disaffected it's not even an attitude, but it's just like just sort of like that kind of thing in Shanghai, because the image of Shanghai right now, at least here, is a place that's really just pumped full. I mean, I'm sure it is, but like this was a surprising video for me to see.
No, it's all over the place now, and I think it's in part because people respond to rates of growth, and they, when things are expanding, even if you're on a lower level, it feels better. And then if you're
Mm.
on a higher level, the hedonic treadmill is such that if you're not going upwards in a certain way, and then of course it's just in different places you have different other constraints, like if your youth unemployment is high in China, or if the rent is high in the US, there's the idea that you can work a lot and you're still very precarious. So the that definitely is a modern disease. Even though we all have things that are amazing and miraculous now, like drone delivered food in China or whatever, it doesn't
Right,
make up
right.
for that feeling of security and growth. But let me return to the Epstein stuff. I think we're seeing, we talk about narrative authority, right, and how America's lost
Mm.
the narrative authority. That's externally. Internally, I think it's even more serious because what you have is narrative collapse about yourself.
Internally in the United States, you mean?
Yes,
Hmm.
internally, internal narrative collapse,
Sure.
because it's impossible. The things that Americans have always believed about themselves, it's incompatible with the idea that our public officials are in cahoots with a shadowy scoundrel like Jeffrey Epstein. Even if
Hmm.
he wasn't so bad, even if he didn't diddle kids, even if he was a good guy, the
Hmm.
whole idea that we elect these officials, and their movements, their decisions are influenced externally to the system. I think it has to make you doubt, right? What is democracy? How do we hold our leaders accountable?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I would I would counter to that is that, in fact, there has always been a common narrative among the people in America that that we were ruled by lizard people. You know what I mean? Like that, we do have a narrative for this in a way, but
folk
it's
narrative,
not.
yes.
It's a folk narrative, yeah, exactly, and none of it is terribly surprising. I think we've long suspected that we're ruled by con men and rapists and pedos, and that Eyes Wide Shut was was a whistleblowing movie, and um and it's always been a very popular story that we're ruled by Illuminati and all that stuff, and I think actually that's the danger. The danger is narrative collapse, yes, but but in its place comes a more folk type narrative, and it's a somewhat dangerous one, I think, because uh it will let people. It's a conspiracy type narrative,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that can lead to extremism.
I think if you think about it in terms of Jungian psychology, what just
Oh, yeah.
happened in America is that what had been kept in our shadow, in the national
Mm,
shadow of America,
mm,
but we also obviously we had this like edge awareness of it,
yeah.
has been like totally revealed. But there's a reason why stuff is kept in the shadow, right? Usually stuff is kept in the shadow because it is contradicting our ego's narrative of ourselves. So America is suddenly confronted with this, and we don't have any narrative for it except for this very folk, very marginalized lizard people narrative. So this is a dangerous moment, and you're right. If the folk narrative is elevated, it could cause extremism because it's not a well thought through narrative. It's a very marginal narrative.
Yeah, and it's not in the Jungian sense, it's not an integration, right?
It's
It
shadow
would be,
possession. I feel like what
yeah,
we're looking for is America is at risk of shadow possession.
shadow possession. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's a really great way of putting it. And so it's danger. I think it's a dangerous moment. Um, but in a way, you know, weirdly it's a time in the United States where I actually think a lot of people are starting to be energized, not in a good way, not in a like I want to get out there and be productive and contribute way, but people are being drawn back into politics. They're being drawn back into the big narrative because like the old narrative I think was just getting kind of boring, and I think it was I think the grand liberal narrative is meant to be boring so that people don't really, it's kind of in the background, but it's not something, most people are just like concerned with their own private lives, and the grand liberal narrative is one of it's boring, or the elite are boring people. They're nerds. They're like Bill Gates. They're like, oh, how do we ship software? And so for the most part, the narrative is almost designed to like just keep people, like away, because just out of sheer like there's nothing of interest here. But now suddenly like the whole thing is super interesting to people, and politically I would say it's never been more alive in the United States, meaning like people are taking the politics of the United States seriously for real now. Like I don't know if you felt this way, but I always thought politics, the US political culture in the 90s was just extremely boring.
Mm-hmm.
And politics was considered boring, and talking about policy was boring, and senators were boring, and
I feel like that
now
all
it's like,
changed. That all changed much earlier, though. I felt like Bush versus Gore was the big branch for me. And that was when
mm,
politics came alive.
It did, yes.
And
Yeah, that was 2000. That was the end of the 90s. Yeah,
remember when we thought that George W. Bush was the worst president ever? It cannot get worse than this, right? And
yeah,
then we had Bush, Obama, and then Trump. And that's when things just felt apocalyptic. And throughout it all, I just feel like the Democratic Party has just been leaking energy. It's just been completely leaking energy. And now, even in the face of an opponent like Trump, who's been like making himself so odious, I don't see coordinated action from the Democratic Party. They almost seem like they're drifting. Yes, there are individual politicians who might say this or that, but there's no coordinated action. They feel spent as a force, the way the Republicans seemed spent as a force before they were hijacked by the Tea Party people. I actually considered today's Republican Party kind of it's the post-Republican Party, right? Like the MAGA people, they don't have a lot to do with the with George W. Bush Republicans. They don't have a lot to do with Condoleezza Rice. You actually had Liz Cheney sharing a stage with Kamala Harris, right?
yeah.
So I don't think, yeah,
I mean, I think it's because of it's not just lack of coordination, though that certainly exists. It's what you're saying. It's that they don't have that narrative. They don't have narrative. They don't have a narrative to offer.
they're out of juice. They don't have juice, whatever juice is. They're very they're very much a husk.
Yeah, I mean, at least with, I mean, honestly, as horrible as Trump is, there is a sense that
Vitality. He has
there's
more
vitality and a story.
vitality. Yeah.
There's drama,
Yeah.
right? There's drama. Things are happening under him. Things of interest, and even if we are against him or for him or whatever, that there is like meaning to there's something to be decoded. There's
Yeah.
some meaning to be derived.
I get called
But with the Democrats, there's just nothing.
I get called out.
Watching,
I get called. It's like watching reruns, and not just reruns, because reruns could be good, but it's like The Simpsons. You know how The Simpsons just keep on coming back for season after season, but it just gets worse and worse and worse.
yeah,
That feels like America under the Democrats. And I get a lot of flack from my friends. I get a lot of flack from my friends because they're like, Angelica, can you say this? Because I said something along the lines of, yeah, I'm kind of, even after all this, I'm still kind of glad that it's Trump and not Kamala, because with Kamala, it will just be going through the same shit, but she won't be funny and we'll just be more depressed.
right.
And also, let's face it, right? With Kamala, I just feel like she's just going to keep being fake. Whereas Trump, at least it's a mask off so the rest of the world can respond. You know, there's no more illusion. There's no more pretend Atlanticism. So it's a lot easier to deal with Trump in some ways, because he might be out of pocket, but at least you know what he's doing.
He's moving the story forward.
Yeah. He's moving the story forward. Thank you. He's moving the story forward, whereas Kamala Harris would just be like hitting the snooze button on history for 4 more years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think so. She would not be, I don't think she'd be going to Beijing in April, for example.
No, I don't think so.
So I don't think all hope is lost. I think at least temporarily, I do think that Trump visiting China will be like a good thing.
Yeah, I feel like, and again, I have very little evidence to back this up, but I feel like a nuclear war is less likely under Trump than Kamala and her ilk. Just because I feel like Trump, he doesn't put so much of his ego in the America project. It's the Trump and Friends project, right? And that's bad in a way, because he's obviously like trying to start his own thing with the border peace and his various ventures with family members and other miscreants. So that's bad. He feels like he's trying to hollow up America to feather his nest for post presidency. That's all bad. But the fact is, he's not ego invested in America remaining number one forever. And I feel like that's the number one threat to nuclear war, is if America feels like it's intolerable for them to be behind China and therefore they can't win with trade, commerce, anything like that. Okay, maybe they can win with war. So that, and then somehow a big war will be a big reset.
Yeah.
That's my fear. That's my biggest fear, is that they'll go insane and do something like that. And I see somehow that's more of a threat with the Democrats than it is under Trump. Although who knows what's going to come after Trump, right? So I don't know.
No. Like, I think what you're saying is actually quite controversial.
Yeah, I'm sure it
here
is.
in the US.
Yeah,
But I'm on your side on this because, you know, and I have, like, honestly, like, I've had to block some people because they're so fucking annoying when I talk to them about this. But like, there are a lot. I think a lot of liberals now are just fucking completely black-pilled, and they're just like, there is absolutely no difference between the neocons and Trump. Like, there's no there. It's all just horrible shit. And I'm like, yeah, it's all horrible, but I don't think we gotten to the point where we can just say there's no differences. Okay. And I do think there's a difference. And I think the difference with Trump is precisely in the fact that he says it.
yeah,
He doesn't wrap up his interventionist foreign policy with talks about liberalizing the country or democracy, or he doesn't care. The thing that he cares about, I think, is really simple. He was like, I'm trying to defend the role of the US dollar. That's what I see. I think a lot of his policy is around understanding that the United States, our entire way of life, is dependent on the financial system. And he understands that you've got to sometimes exert force in order to force people to stay on the US system. And that's what we're doing. Like, for example, like with Venezuela, I think in a way he may have handled that better than the Democrats could have, or like the liberals could have, in the sense of, like, what he did is completely illegal.
yeah.
It's horrifying.
But it's
But he
creative.
didn't, it's creative. He didn't start a fucking war.
Yeah. Well,
And
here's the thing. Look at how nimble he was with the Houthis, right? He basically took a shot at it, realized that it was going to be a bad time for the U.S. Navy, and he noped out of there. He declared victory and noped out of there. Can you
Yep.
imagine a Democrat doing that? Excuse me. No,
Exactly.
they'll be mired
Yeah.
because they feel like, oh my God, we'll lose so much face. We don't do this, and then we're gonna be like trapped there forever. But Trump is just like, nope, I'm out, and it's embarrassing for a couple of news cycles. But guess what? We don't have this like gaping wound that constantly need to be addressed.
Yeah.
So at least give him that much credit. Yeah, he's willing to. He does a lot of what I call stove touching, right? He would try and nudge on the issue to see if it works. But the good thing is he's conscious about it. He knows he's kind of touching the edges of where American power still goes or not. And when it looks like he's going to get into trouble, he pulls back. And this is why, fingers crossed, I think that he might do something symbolic on Iran, but I don't think he's going to get us in there. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, look, he already bombed Iran.
he did already.
Right.
Yeah, but that was before, yeah.
And it was so clear. And people, I argue with people this all the time. I'm like, clearly that was telegraphed. Like,
Yeah.
Clearly that whole thing was kind of fake.
Kayfabe. He
That shit was
came out of
kayfabe.
wrestling. Of course it's kayfabe.
Yeah. Exactly. He did come out of wrestling. And, I'm not saying any of this is good in that sense. I'm just saying that, he has a certain, like you said, he touches the stove, but I feel like, in a way, his view is let's let like these are pressure release type things. But he's actually saying to Venezuela, the government, I'm not interested in regime change. I just want certain things out of you.
Yes.
Okay, these are the things that I want out of you. I want you to have an energy sector that's aligned with our corporate sector. Okay,
Yes.
that's what I want. I want the fucking oil. All right. If you can let me develop the oil, if we can let me control the oil, then we're cool. And I think in a way that is why I am optimistic about a grand deal with China. A grand deal with China is going to have to, and I think the Chinese released a readout of a recent call. They had there was like a conference call like in anticipation of the April visit, and the Chinese government readout just said, our core interest remains Taiwan. And I think what's really interesting about that is their core interest is not supply chain or their core interest is not trade. Their core interest is Taiwan, it's security. And I don't think Trump has any red lines on security. I think he has, vis-a-vis China, I think he has red lines on trade. His thing is like, don't dump treasuries. Don't fuck with our financial system, right? You need to support the US dollar. You need to, And so I think he's going to go in there and say, look, I have red lines on trade. You have red lines on security. We can make a deal. I don't know if that's going to be the outcome, but I do think there's still room for that. Whereas, like you said, with like a Kamala or something, there's no room.
No, there's no room. There's no room because they're just so sclerotic.
They're maximalist in all ways,
And yeah, I don't know what comes next for the Democratic Party because they seem to be hoping that Trump will make so many mistakes that they'll just have an easy pickup. But then what? What are they going to do? What vision do they have for putting this Humpty Dumpty back together again? Because American reputation is shattered. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they can just go back to the Europeans and say, oops, sorry about that. We won't do that again, I hope.
I have a suspicion. You want to hear my suspicion?
Go on.
My suspicion, which I think is playing out, is their vision of how to wrest back power is to cause a financial collapse in the United States. Is to cause a market crash. And then a huge recession, pin it all on Trump, and then kind of reinstill discipline into the market because everyone's going to be losing their jobs and everyone's going to be freaked out.
You know what? That kind of makes sense.
Run on a populist economic platform.
I think that kind of makes sense because first of all, if they kind of see a hot potato coming, everybody sees it, right? Everybody sees a hot potato coming. Yeah. It's just like, when is it going to drop? It's better that you can have it drop during Trump and blame it on Trump and come in post-crisis with a new message, whatever. Clean skin, clean slate. Even if your country is going to be in a shit, it's in a way it's better. It's
pin
clean.
It on the other guy.
Yeah, it's clean. Yeah. Like there's a way in which you're just like, America is on such a thin ledge that if it's going to fall off at some point, it might as well jump.
Yeah, and look. I mean, that like when I tell people this, they have a hard time believing that they would do something like that. I'm like, look at the fucking emails. Look at these people. You think they care? Yeah. You think like anything is out of bounds with these people? You know what I mean? Like, have you learned anything? These people have absolutely no fucking scruples. And what's interesting now is I already see like that there is like a sort of reinvestment into like these bankers as like heroes. Like a lot of people are like, when Trump was going after Jerome Powell, they're like, Jerome Powell, like fucking, stood up to Trump like no one else will. Jerome Powell has nuts of steel. And then, Mark Carney was a central banker. He was
Yeah, yeah.
he was the head of the Bank of England. Weirdly, as a Canadian, and people are pointing to him as like this hero. And I think there is, I'm starting to sense a, it's almost like the bargaining stage of grief.
Yeah, yeah. I can see
Where
that.
they're saying like, okay, let's roll it back. Like, let's get the financial oligarchs back in there because at least they know how to run a country. And so there's this renewed faith in like maybe we can roll it back to the Wall Street era and we can have the bankers come and save the world and that. So I think I think there is buy-in. I don't think it's going to work, but I mean I think there is buy-in to this idea that we should crash the market. This time blame it on Trump. Say the people who can fix it are actually the financial people. And then at that point, we're going to be in a situation where maybe we can't really fix anything. Like this time we break it, we can't fix it. And then we see the beginning of American Weimar.
Wow. Well, we'll have to see what happens. I think America has a lot going for it in terms of resources, in terms of, but yeah, it's gotten really messy. It's gotten really messy, and I think a big part of the problem is so much of its identity is bound up in having a very special role in the world. And yeah, Trump has tanked that. So there's going to be a national identity crisis.
Yeah, and it's not going to play out well because there's no therapist. You know what I mean? There's no like there's no national therapist.
But you know what? In a way, okay,
to get
we've
us to
been
confront our
talking
shit.
shit about America, but let me tell you, there is something invigorating still in the way that its psychodrama is playing out on the world stage compared to the Europeans. The Europeans, I feel like, have just committed to catastrophe in a whole different way. And
Yeah.
they, instead of America, like, I feel like no matter what happens, no matter how crazy it gets, it's still like very clear about, yeah, I have to sort myself out. And the Europeans have just gone completely into like kind of becoming invested in an external drama. And I don't even think the elites even believe in it, but they're so invested in this Russia boogeyman
Yeah.
that, they can't even, at least America in its messy way is doing the work, whereas Europe is just continuing to dig the hole. I feel that way anyhow.
Oh, I think you're right. I mean, I can kind of understand their view on that. Which is like, look, the Cold War was such a good time for the Europeans.
Oh yeah, sure.
Like that was the height of the European miracle of like, we don't really have to work very hard. We have great lifestyle. The whole world, including America, like just admires us and looks up to us, and we don't really do anything. And the whole thing was premised on the Cold War. Was premised on, containing the Soviets, and that kind of got stale after the Soviet Union collapsed. But now they're like, look, all the threats back. Look, Putin is it's the Soviet Union again. He's putting it back together. Let's go back to 1963.
Like
all the conditions are here for us to go back to 1963 like it used to be. So yeah, I think they're like really, really, they had such a good Cold War experience that particularly Western Europe that they would do anything to go back to that era. And I think watching Putin invade Ukraine, they were just like, how could we not go? But look, America, how could we not go back to the golden, the good days?
Yep. So we're doing the thing. We're doing the thing. Oh no, we're not doing the thing. Not this time. We're not doing the thing. In fact, the thing America did was to precipitate the crisis, right? So as far as America is concerned, as soon as Russia invaded Ukraine, it was mission accomplished. Really, I mean, obviously, if they could have collapsed Russia, that would have been the cherry on top. But the real fear was that Germany and Russia will become too integrated and will be like a Eurasian superstate to rival America. That was the whole like fear. And But that soon got outdated because they didn't foresee that Russia was going to become so integrated with China. So now you have the extra nightmarish Eurasian superstate to deal with.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think yeah, Europe just has no energy. It's just like a completely stale thing over there. I don't know what's going. But hey, at least they've showed signs. Recently, you see. I think the Carney thing showed a little bit of invigoration. He called himself. He compared himself to Václav Havel, basically.
Well,
And then the next day, Keir Starmer went to China.
I do think that
So
Canada does have EU energy somehow. It feels like a
right,
spiritual member of the EU.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So well, and interesting, interesting developments over there. But yeah, I think. Do you have any? Oh, yeah. So I'll drop the link to your Typology YouTube and Substack
Sure, I
in
appreciate it. Yeah.
yeah.
And
Um, and any other things that you want to tell people about, like that you're working on? Like what's the vision for this YouTube
well,
video slash podcast that you're
I
doing?
really feel like there's a gap in the market for somebody from Taiwan
Sure.
speaking out for the 60% of Taiwanese people that aren't boba loving, pro democracy, pro America, anti China, who are not spouting that line. Because I think it's really important that that voice gets represented in the English sphere. Now, I'm bilingual. I also write in Chinese, but I'm more comfortable writing in English. And I think it's more important for this voice to be in English. I'm also very, very aware that China is the biggest story of my lifetime. The rise of China. It was right here, and it was just like hidden from my sight by my own biases, and I feel like a lot of regret about that. But I'm also determined to make up for it. So my podcast is all about learning about China, learning about what it is without a lot of preconceived notions. Um, yeah, that's what I'm inviting people to sign on to. Is like my journey of discovery. Hopefully, I'm going to have lots of interesting guests on as well as my solo kind of ramblings. And yeah, I hope to have you guys join me. And it also would contribute a lot to my future success because I do think that this is going to be my thing. I want to make China my thing. And it's not right now, but it could be one day. So we'll see.
No, I think people in China would be really interested too, because I do think that's they're still my experience, because when I go to China I present as, oh, he's from Taiwan, even though I'm not technically from Taiwan, but
Yeah, people.
they can tell by the way I speak Chinese. There a lot of people can just say, oh, he sounds like he's from Taiwan, and I do think they are curious about the viewpoint in Taiwan, because as much as the Americans view Taiwan people in Taiwan a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
I think people in China view people in Taiwan a certain way too,
Yeah,
and their view actually kind of aligns with the American view, and I think it's surprising. It would be surprising to hear you talk about it,
for
because I
sure,
think
for
that's a very
sure.
different. That goes against what I think a lot of preconceived notions there would
I
be.
think
So,
I didn't come out of the vacuum, okay? There's a whole bunch of influencers, there's a whole bunch of YouTube Mandarin only influencers that I listen to that really radicalized me. And I think that I just happen to be the one popcorn that's popping in the English language sphere. But then there's going to be more. I'm already noticing some. So my job,
why English language? What's the thought there?
well, because first of all, much more comfortable speaking English than in
Yeah.
Chinese.
Mm.
In Chinese, I can speak and I can write, and I
Hmm.
can do it at a professional level. But it's just like, imagine if I subtracted I don't know, 15 IQ points or something.
Right.
I'm just not as
Yeah.
smart. I'm just not as smooth. So I prefer expressing myself in English. And also, I see that, quite frankly, there are a lot of great influencers already speaking to this topic in English, right? Like
Yeah.
really heavyweights plus the next generation. So they're coming up, they're doing well. Some of them are going to China, being on Bilibili, making a real go of it. Fantastic. But guess what? Nobody's doing it in the English world. And I think it's actually extremely important because English is still the international language. And China is extremely badly understood in English. Remember on the top of the program when we talked about the guy who was like, "Oh, imagine how bad the Chinese Epstein Files would be." That's
Right.
Jordan
Yeah.
Snyder. He
Oh,
hosts China Talk. It's his
yeah.
job. It is his whole ass job to be a China understander and explainer for the Western world. And look what a bad job he's doing. He can't even be neutral enough on China to consider that maybe they are not run by a giant pedophile ring just because America and the West is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, that's my turf. Like speaking in America, kind of translating the what's going on in China. I think there's a lot of interest in it because I, quite frankly, like talking to Chinese people is fantastic. I hope a lot of them do follow my work. But to do so in Chinese actually puts me at a disadvantage. So I love all my Chinese followers, but I think sticking to English and translating stuff from the Chinese side to English is the way to go for me.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. And with with Jordan Snyder, to be honest, it's not just that he doesn't understand China. These people, that cadre of like China watcher, they don't understand America either. That's the thing about them. They really don't understand America at all because I don't know if Jordan Snyder is a shitlib, but a lot of them are just Kool-Aid drinking shitlibs that don't really know anything.
Yeah,
So
I fear that is the common state of that is a sad state of the China watching world.
yeah, but they're so out of date now because the U.S. is such a post-liberal state.
Yeah,
These people
they're
are
so out of
more,
date in so many ways. It's still pushing the democracy narrative, and also a lot of them I feel like they 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 haven't been to China. They haven't been to the new China. They were
yeah,
kicked out, or they felt like they had to leave at a certain point, and they just haven't been back for years. They're still living off the contacts from the good old days or whatever. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh
Should we leave it there? That
yeah.
was
Well,
a
thank you so
very
much for
good double
having me
episode.
on. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, no, it's always great when you're on. All right, so we will catch y'all next time.
Bye.
See ya.